So welcome. My name is Kia Tan. I'm the Associate Director of Admission, overseeing diversity engagement and transfer initiatives in the Office of Admissions. I'm joined here today with my colleague Angie Baxter, who will be providing the presentation on Where the Heart Is, Identity Development, Exploration, and Resources. Go ahead, Angie.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate you being here and for this opportunity to present with you. My name is Angie Baxter. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I have the privilege of serving as program coordinator within the Office of Social Justice Initiatives and Identity Programs. I would like to go ahead and introduce my colleague, Onar Privativo. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. Welcome. My name is Onar Primitivo. I serve as the Director of Social Justice Initiatives and Identity Programs. I work with Angie in the office and definitely wanting to share information with you in terms of our office and resources, and just really excited to be here, and also just really recognize what's going on in our country and around the world. So trying to be present in that moment. We definitely I appreciate you all joining us today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Onar. Appreciate that. All right, so the Office of Social Justice Initiatives and Identity Programs is one of our newest offices here at UC Merced, and we have the privilege of serving all of campus, working with our colleagues in various different offices and departments across campus, and with faculty and staff, and primarily working with our students. So one of the things that is really important to us is to make sure that we are in service and a resource for all of our scholars and our colleagues across campus. Our vision is for every UC Merced scholar to thrive in our multicultural global society. Our mission is to enhance the retention of our historically underserved scholars and to foster an inclusive campus environment for all, providing opportunities for holistic development, intersectional community building, and student agency. And we are committed to serving UC Merced's diverse scholars community. We seek to influence university policy and practice to position our campus as a hub for transformative leadership and social change. Within our office, we have our director, Onar Privativo, which you have just met. We have Lorene Fisher, who is also a program coordinator, and then myself, as well as 7 scholar employees that also work with us to bring you a number of different programs, educational identity development workshops, and then also just engage with you with our various different centers and our different projects. So within our office, we are charged with responding to our community through new hybrid formats, utilizing innovative approaches, and then also making sure that we are addressing the whole individual in their development. So it's not just talking about one specific identity, such as, say, my gender or my sexual orientation or my race, but it's our intersections of those different identities, and also including the fact that I am also a mother, I am a daughter, I am a sister, I am an educator. And so looking at all of those different aspects of myself to develop all of those different aspects. So that's one of the things that is really important to us. And then also we are charged with supporting and helping folks develop how to be an inclusive leader and change maker. And so we are imagining a new collective future, as Onar would say, to create that next generation of leaders. We do that through coalition building, collective healing, education and training, our living learning communities, and through a sense of belonging with our uh, cultural and resource centers. So a little bit about our coalition building. One of the new things that we're doing is the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion grants, which are different various student organizations have the opportunity to apply for funding when they're partnered with other folks. And so that's helping to build coalitions through our different student organizations and folks that identify across the spectrum with their identities. We also have our different cultural center advisory boards where folks from different identities can come and help us develop what our centers are, help us implement the various different programs and services and resources that we provide through our centers, and support all of the scholars, faculty, and staff that are utilizing our spaces. And then we are also creating a student equity, diversity and inclusion campus climate committee, or we've also called it our multicultural student committee through our ASCCM. So we're still developing that and trying to figure out what that really looks like. Ultimately, though, all of these different projects and different committees are all working towards building that coalition between different groups, different folks from different backgrounds. Okay. We also provide an opportunity for collective healing circles. And basically what these collective healing circles are is an opportunity for us to heal, reflect, reframe, and honor folks that have been victims and survivors of unwarranted violence against our Black, Brown, and trans communities. And so these are opportunities for us to come together and support each other in a way that's intentional and inclusive. So we host different healing circles. Additionally, we have opportunities for folks to go deeper into learning about not only their identities, but their leadership style, their communication styles, learn more about social justice. And a couple of the ways that we do that is through our social justice retreat, our Queer Ally program, our Bobcat Connect, and through our Radical Empathy presentations. And so the social justice retreat is an annual retreat that is a facilitated journey in exploring your identities and sharing our stories and learning from each other and about our social justice, equity, and inclusion concepts. And so that is a 3-day weekend where scholars can come together and build that foundation. Our Queer Ally program is an opportunity for folks to be introduced to different concepts and issues that impact our LGBTQ+ community. LGBTQ+ is lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and questioning community. And so that's an introductory workshop that we do host on a regular basis for our scholars to request and be able to attend those. We have our Bobcat Connects, which is basically an opportunity for folks to really dive into what does it really mean to be in community with each other and how do you connect with other folks and build that relationship with them. And then our Radical Empathy is really looking at how do we not only connect with folks, but also build a stronger community with radical empathy. Onar, would you be willing to share what the Radical Empathy does more concretely?
Yeah, thank you, Angie. So part of the education and training is we have provided and collaborated with different stakeholders within the Dean of Students, the equity, diversity, and inclusion office, which is brand new, but really looking at empathy as a foundation for us for that authentic connections, right? And so what is, I think, makes me stay at UC Merced is this whole piece around ensuring that folks are connected and in different areas, right? So when you join the UC Merced community, we really are very intentional around making those connections. So it could be part, and I know that somebody asked, how do the living learning communities tie into these? That's just another aspect. They could be both within interest, it could be both academic pursuits. So we have natural science, living learning communities, we have leadership. So if you want to learn more about that, we have those who are wanting to get involved in service. And if you are already involved and want to continue that, so it's really like-minded folks having those connections and having those similarities. And so in our office, what we pride on is this connection piece, right? Because I think when we learn more each other and we hear about other people's stories and struggles, that you are not alone. Understanding the demographics of UC Merced, that it is first generation, right? Those who are first in their family to go to college, and that situated in Central Valley. So it definitely has its challenges. However, we want to make sure that folks, scholars as yourselves, even faculty and staff, are connected deeper than just your, oh, I think I'm taking this class with this professor, but really engaging in those meaningful conversation, knowing that those are also skill building, right? Connecting with people. And so what we see hard skills when it comes to academics, we also value that soft skills that we provide within our office, but also within the Division of Student Affairs and across campus.
Yep.
Thank you, Angie.
Thank you, Onar. I really appreciate that. Additionally, we also provide opportunities to go to programs to discuss different films on current events, campus climate or national climate issues, and then have discussions about what are the impacts of what you just watched or what's going on with our current climate right now. So that's another opportunity to do some education and training and then coalition building. So I saw that somebody asked about our live and learning communities. And so the living learning communities, as Onar was briefly talking about, that's where our scholars get to choose to live together and go to class with talking specifically about this interest in social justice. And so social justice residential program is supported by our office, and it also promotes the retention and empowerment of those who are living within that office. It fosters a welcoming community where you can dive deeper into social justice concepts and also your identities as well. And so you also gain opportunities to not only get involved in service, but also learn about leadership and have opportunities to do some leadership development and engage in that. Okay, so that's our social justice live and learning community. We also have what we call Afro Hall, which was created by our student organization, our Black Student Union, and the African Student Association. So it was created by our students for our folks that identify in that community. And it's really focusing in on creating a welcoming environment for our students from all cultures within the African diaspora who are interested in exploring their African and Black identities, while also taking and having opportunities to network with and mentor with folks on campus. This live and learning community also provides academic support through opportunities to meet with tutors and study times and stuff like that. And then there's a lot of community engagement. And so that's our Afro Hall. If you need more clarification on both of those, you'll see a slide that has our contact information, so that if you're really interested in engaging with those live-in learning communities, you'll have that opportunity to get a hold of us and be able to pick that out for those who are going to be living on campus. However, there will be a hybrid model where you're going to be engaging online, and then there might be some live-in learning, living on campus. So that's our live-in learning communities currently. We will be potentially expanding those, but right now those are our two focuses. So then when we're talking about this sense of belonging, one of the things that we really want to make sure is that not only is your whole opportunity to really dive deep in a holistic manner within your identities and the different things that you're involved in, but we also want to create spaces for you to be able to connect with other people based on some of those different identities. And so we do provide the cultural and resource centers. So we do have the Black Student Resource Center, the LGBTQ+ Pride Center, the Multicultural Center, and the Graduate Cultural Resource Center. And so all of these different spaces are spaces that scholars have the opportunity to go to be at, engage with, go to different programs and events, find resources and support, and build community. And what we're hoping with these different spaces is that we can generate and increase your sense of belonging and really feel that UC Merced is your home. And then also with the different cultural and resource centers, we partner with various different departments across campus, such as our Margot Souza Leadership Center and our services for students with who are undocumented. Those are just a couple of the different departments and programs that we also actually partner with our cultural centers. Again, our centers are going to be in a hybrid model. We're going to be providing different opportunities to engage via online and then also in person. So does anybody have any questions about any of that information that I have presented thus far? Because we're going to go into a little activity.
Hi, Angie. We do have some questions, but I'm going to go ahead and hold them because I think they're more general.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to kind of talk about is basically the social identity profile, which we utilize on campus through our diversity awareness program. And this is really looking at how do we identify and then how do other folks perceive. So when you're looking at your identities, we really want to look at not only how you specifically identify in your identity or member groups, but we also want to think about what are those identities that are most salient for us. And that really means what are those identities that really come to that surface and that you really, really identify with. Whereas some identities, yeah, you identify with that, but they're not like right there on the surface. So for example, I identify as a lesbian, and that is one that that of my identities that is front and center pretty much in every context that I go into. So it's a lot of the work that I do, it's a lot of the conversations that I have, and it's front and center. There's no sitting on the back burner in any way, shape, or form. However, one of my other identities is that I consider myself a USian, which is different than American, because when you say American, while it is talking about the US, it's also talking, it takes and makes Canada, Central America, and South America completely invisible. And so I say USian. So that's an identity that it's there, but it's not usually right up in that core identity. So what I was hoping is for folks that are engaged with this conversation is take a few minutes and think about different social identities that really come up for you that are very salient and very on the surface. No matter where you go, that's a huge core identity that really impacts everything that you're doing, everything that you're experiencing, and how you see that lens. So if you could just take a few moments to think about that, and then if you're comfortable, you can share some of those identities through the Q&A and chat. So go ahead and think about that. When you're thinking about that, think about these different dimensions of identity. It could be ability, disability, your age, body size, your stature, body type, citizenship, cognitive ability, college generation, ethnicity, gender identity, whether English is your first language or not, national origin, parental or family status, your race, religion, spirituality, or faith, your sex, your sexual orientation, your socioeconomic status. So those are just some of those identities. So go ahead and think about those and think about what is most salient for you. And if anybody feels comfortable and wants to share through our chat, you're more than welcome to. So just take a few moments to think about those things.
We have one person.
Okay.
We have an individual who identifies as Hispanic, but prefers to be referred to as Mexican.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that. Anybody else want to share?
Another one is I'm just reading off of what folks are sharing, but another one is my two most forefront social identities are being gay and also Hispanic.
Thank you.
And then I have another one who identifies as Mexican American. And I can throw myself in there too. I identify as a Hmong woman.
Okay. Fantastic.
We have a student who identifies as Chicano, and another one who identifies as African American, but people say Black.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you all sharing. So just to model, I'll go through all these different identities and I'll give you what my salient identity is. So I am differently able-minded and able-bodied. I am 42 years old. Woo! Age, wow. Anyway, my body size, I am extremely short. I am under 5 foot tall. And so when you see me, yeah, I'm always looking up. I am a documented citizen. My college generation, I am a first generation college student, like many of our scholars here, they are first generation. My gender identity, I identify as a woman. As you can probably tell, I do speak English, and that is my first language, my spoken language, and my reading language. I identify as white. My sexual orientation is a lesbian, and I am now lower middle class socioeconomic status. So those are just some of my salient identities. Some of the other things that you want to think about with your identity is, what are those identities that you think about least? What are those identities that kind of are in those backgrounds? So I'm a mother and my children are both grown and they don't live with me. So while that's a huge identity for me, it's not one that I think about very often, right? I also don't really think about my age much, because although I'm 42, I don't feel like it. I feel much younger than that. So those are a couple of my identities that I don't really think about very often. versus some of the identities that I actually think about a lot, which is like I had said, my sexual orientation. I do think about the fact that I am white a lot, and thinking about the work that I do and those power dynamics. So that's something that I think about a lot. So when you're thinking about your identities, also think about what is that what are those identities that you think about a lot, and what don't you think about? And then consider what others assume is most central for you. So somebody in the chat had said that they identify as African American, but people say Black. So what does that really mean to you? Because it means something different to you than what it does for how people are perceiving you to be. So those perceived identities. And then also you can look at like gender identity. While I may present one way, that may not necessarily be exactly how I identify or how other people perceive my gender identity to be. For myself, my gender identity aligns with the sex that I was assigned at birth, which is female, and I do identify as a woman. So that aligns, but that doesn't mean that my presentation is always very feminine. So others may perceive something different, a different identity for me. Okay. And then which identities do you have privileges in? Because we have multiple different identities and we have those intersecting identities, there are some privileges where we are, some identities where we receive unearned access, unearned privileges because of those identities. So for example, as somebody who is white, I have lived a life that has not been as challenging as other folks based on their race. So there were things that while I worked hard for, they were doors that opened to me or resources that I had or opportunities that I had simply because of the color of my skin. So what are some of those identities that really grants you privileges and benefits? You know, so outside of my whiteness, I'm also documented. And so I don't have to worry about jobs. I don't have to worry about whether or not I'm getting an education or I'll be able to continue to get an education in higher ed because I have funding for that. I don't have to worry about all of the ICE coming to take my family away or walking home and not having any of my family because I'm documented and my family is also documented. And so there's a lot of identities that hold privileges and others that have been marginalized and do not have the same resources and access. So when you're thinking about those identities, think about the ways in which they interconnect and impact each other. So I can't separate out my gender from my sexual orientation or from my race. They all impact the way in which I walk through the world. So your different identities and the way that they intersect with each other, they do impact the way that you experience the world around you. And so when you're thinking about your social identity, you need to think about not only how those different identities are impacting or have impacted you, but how that is, you're experiencing that in the world around you, and then how others perceive those identities. Any questions about the social identity?
Actually, we do have one, and I think it's a very appropriate one. So our student is asking, some African Americans prefer to be called Black because they say that they're not from Africa and they're from the United States. Is it wrong to use Black, or should I use person of color?
Okay, that is a really good question. So thank you very much for bringing that up because I know that a lot of folks struggle with that. So that can be very individual. There are a lot of folks that really do want to be do identify with African American, and then there's also a lot of folks that identify as Black, and so depending upon the individual, it could be different. Um, and as far as utilizing the term people of color, that is definitely a generalization. And we do use it within our equity, diversity, and inclusion, all the work that we do, as a way to talk about how we've been, different identities have been underserved, particularly folks, people of color have been underserved within our society, within our different institutions. And so folks do utilize that terminology. Um, however, some folks may not and are not comfortable with it. And so it's really about how are you ensuring that you're honoring how that individual identifies and finding out what their identities are, and then respecting that when you're interacting with them. Onar, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
Yes, great question. And so part of it too is really a couple slides ago, Angie mentioned about like the student agency, right? This is about like empowerment of your identities, and also how one walks through in one's life, right? So I walk as a first generation, low income, right? An immigrant, single, with a single parent, coming to America. So that defines my identity. So part of it is also using it into context, right? And for me, when it comes to terminology, that if your friend does prefer to be called Black, then you're on, as Angie said, you're honoring that, and then making the context also informs language, right? So when we're talking about a group of people, absolutely people of color, persons of color, can be used. But also, again, part of it too is the what I mentioned earlier, right? It's like that authentic connection, really learning to know and deepen those connections. So I know that Angie's pronouns, I know Angie identify as. So having those and taking the time to get to know, and this is jumping to another option when you all join us in the fall, whatever that model will look like, as the university leadership is looking into hybrid models, and because of the pandemic, that it's an opportunity for you to connect with each other, and really learning about these different identities. Really, for me, enhances that relationship, right? And also, we know from research, and I'm also a first generation college student, and I was also the first one to go get my master's degree, and the youngest of three. And so with all these identities that I carry, that I like to share and bring, because one, I typically have felt alone, that this is I'm the only one in this situation. And so for us to, in our office, to really provide these opportunities and spaces for people to connect is critical. And again, the social identity wheel is one aspect, right, of what we do when it comes to training. But really, again, honoring the space, having that agency, and really getting to know that person. So yeah, that is a valid point, right? That people would rather be identified as Black because, quote, they're not from Africa, or some folks will use African American. And some of our students who come from Africa, it says, no, I don't identify as Black. I don't identify as African American. I identify as African, right? And so having that opportunity, and once you have that information, really is empowering for both you and the person that you're connecting with.
Yep. Thank you, Onar. I appreciate your input.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when you're all thinking about your identity, another, oh gosh, why isn't it moving? Another way to think about the intersecting identities is the multiple dimensions of identity. And so you have your core identity, which is your personal attributes, your personal characteristics, all of those personal identities. And then there's that context that folks have outside of them. So the family background, the social cultural conditions, current experiences, your careers and life planning. So all of those different things come into effect with your identities. And when you walk into a room, depending upon that context, a different identity might become more prevalent. And so the little, I call it the identity atom, because that's what it looks like to me. But at different moments and in different contexts, different identities become more important. Not that they're not all important, because they absolutely are. But so, for example, when I am doing a presentation or doing a workshop with the Queer Ally program, my LGBT community identity is more salient and more at the forefront than, say, maybe my socioeconomic class. So with your different identities, the context really matters. Okay, so just really quick with talking about identities, you're talking about how you identify and how other folks have assigned you identities, whether or not you are passing, which basically means say I can pass as straight. Not everybody looks at me and thinks that I'm a lesbian, and so I can have privileges that others don't receive when they are looked at and they are perceived to be LGBTQ plus. So then the perceived identities, how other folks see you, your core identities that they never change. It's really where you are, and then the context that impacts. And then looking at how those different identities intersect. Okay. So I just wanted to quickly give you an opportunity to look at some different resources to be able to contact us. So we'll leave this slide up while folks can ask some questions. So we can answer some questions. So does anybody have any questions?
Hi, Angie. So we do have a few questions here in the Q&A. One of the students is curious to know, are there any LGBTQ plus clubs or organizations on campus or something similar that students can get involved in?
Absolutely. So we have Lambda Alliance, which is a student-led student organization, and they meet on a weekly basis. However, every semester that the date and time changes so that they can accommodate their members. So there is a way to get a hold of them via email. So we can certainly provide that email. Let me write that down. I can send that email and we can get that out to y'all.
Yeah, and also if you have access to Cat Life, I believe that you may not need to have a login. You can peruse through or go through what active clubs are on campus. So it goes from special interests, academics, professional, fraternities and sororities, and right from the underwater basket weaving club, right? Or if you want to start one. So it's catlife.ucmerced.edu. That's catlife.ucmerced.edu. That is housed within our Office of Student Involvement, and that's where it's what we consider the Facebook of UC Merced's clubs and organization.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Onar.
Mm-hmm.
So any other questions before we wrap up?
Yes, we have one more question.
Okay.
How has the COVID pandemic affected UC Merced? And then I might add also maybe how your office is delivering services to students.
Okay. So, um, how the pandemic has impacted UC Merced. Well, we're all working from home. We're taking classes online. Uh, so we definitely are doing the physical distancing. However, we are encouraging folks to socially interact via safe distances apart and also via social media and online. And so we've definitely changed the way in which we are providing workshops, our classes, our different presentations. This is one of them. We're online versus in person. Coming back in the fall, we will be doing a hybrid model where some stuff is going to be available online, some stuff will be in person, but we will still be doing the physical distancing. So anybody else want to jump in on how COVID-19 has impacted UC Merced? Because that's a huge question.
Yeah, I can jump in. I think that's a great question. And so, like any other campuses and universities, right, we are trying to get creative in ways of delivery. That is our commitment as staff members, that even though that there is physical distancing, that our delivery will look different. However, the commitment is still the same. It is very much to best practices, to ensure that your experience with UC Merced is a positive one. Student success is one of our key components, and of course comes with that is your experience, your personal experience. So when Angie talks about the hybrid model, and so just to put it into context, right? So with COVID and where UC Merced within Central Valley is situated, that our numbers are peak when we're talking about peak in terms of, you know, larger cities like LA, San Francisco, New York have reached their peak. So they're easily are going into some beyond stage 1, beyond stage 2, where UC Merced or the Central Valley, we're peaking about around this time, the end of June or early July, right? So we have more folks being tested, more resources coming into to the town. So hence, when we talk about this hybrid model, it is definitely in conversation. We are looking at the different ways of folks and scholars who will be joining us. What will that look like in terms of housing? Housing is really, really busy in trying to make those plans work, but really committed to that experience. So it has impacted us, absolutely. But we are also aware in terms of the precautions that needs to be taken when we do open, when we're talking about contact tracing, when we're talking about, you know, small class, and surely large classes will not be in person. So being very, very creative, using Zoom, as we all know, understanding Zoom fatigue, right? As a campus, we are in those conversations. So what can be taught in person at small, in a small group, but also what can be delivered via online. But in terms of services that we're also, the staff, faculty, and administrations are being very creative in ensuring that delivery is first and foremost to ensure that what you need is you get what you need.
Thank you, Arnar. And then we had a follow-up question that I would like to connect because it's connected to the previous question. But just, will there be more courses provided online due to COVID-19? And the answer to that is yes. But our campus did just send out a communication that I want to make sure all of you had an opportunity to view earlier this week about the fall and about us going to be a hybrid, moving into the fall in a hybrid model where we are going to practice the social distancing and also have some in-person class. So I really want to direct you all to that communication as well, because that will provide you a little bit more detail. And then in line with courses being offered, we have a communication that was just sent out about course registration and that it will be postponed for another week. And so you should refer to that communication too for clarity on that information. So, all right. So with that, we are out of questions in the Q&A. Well, let me thank all of you very much, and Angie and Onar for participating in providing this webinar to all of you. This session was recorded, and so we will be posting this on our admitted.ucmerced.edu website. It will be listed under our webinars. And I want to go ahead and encourage all of you to visit that website, as well as to follow us through our social media. We will be posting, upcoming events, virtual events, as well as also, communicating with all of you via our social media. If you have any questions, because we do understand right now it is a very challenging time and a time that we have never experienced, please feel free to contact us too. We have our information here on the left side of the screen for you. So thank you all very much for joining us, and we hope you have a great evening.